Hello, welcome to my channel, Rohit Speaks. And in today's video, we're going to talk about is Alzheimer's disease. You have been hearing about people suffering from Alzheimer's or they have Alzheimer's, but what exactly happens in this disease and what causes it? We're going to talk about it and what are the some things which you can do to help people who are suffering from Alzheimer's, or if they are having early stage Alzheimer's, what you can do to help them out. So, what is Alzheimer's? So, Alzheimer's is a disease of neurons, or at least your brain, which affects your day-to-day functionality. It's your memory loss. You cannot think straight. You lose a track of things you can do, which you used to do normally, and you keep forgetting things, or suddenly you forget time and place. And that has to do with your memory mostly. And so, it's a neurodegenerative disorder, if I have to put it in biological term. It is named after Alois Alzheimer. He was a German physicist who discovered or first case of dementia, which was memory loss. He registered and he studied that. So it was after him they named this disease Alzheimer's, because dementia or loss of memory or loss of thoughts is part of the Alzheimer's disease. It usually affects people who are elderly, but there are also cases where it has started affecting people who are at least 30 years or 40 years of age. And this is called as early onset of dementia or Alzheimer's. So what are the indicators of Alzheimer's? So you can find a lot of resources, but out of that, these are the main topic or main points which you can see as an indicators of Alzheimer's. Is first, memory loss. Now, memory loss can be, it's not that you forgot to, for example, you're going out and you got a list to buy from groceries and you forgot to buy bread, or that's not memory loss. Memory loss is losing a whole chunk of memory, or losing whole chunk of like what you did the whole thing yesterday. You can't remember what you did the whole thing, kind of like a blackout of certain things. Confusion with time and place. So you don't know if it is day or time, or what is the date today, and suddenly you're walking and then you forget that where you are. Like, for example, someone who is suffering from Alzheimer's and was about to go to a railway station, and in the middle of the day, in the middle of the road while crossing, they will forget where they are heading. So that is called as confusion, and they would get stranded. Trouble understanding visual images. They couldn't understand what's going on or the space. So if it is like how, for example, if you're putting a cube into a cubic space, they couldn't tell if it is going to fit or not, or it's not. They couldn't identify the space between the objects. That's the problem. Challenges in planning, solving problems, difficulty in completing familiar tasks. Previously, the person was able to do a normal task, but now it is very hard or difficult for them to go from point A to point B in completing that task. And then problems with words, speaking. They don't remember new words or couldn't write. That's are the indicators of Alzheimer's. Now, before we get into Alzheimer's and talk about the problem which affects your brain, we need to know what are the parts of your brain and what it functions. So in theory, there are 6 parts of the brain. There is the frontal lobe, there is the parietal lobe, there is the temporal, occipital, cerebellum, and the brainstem. So it's all indicated here in different colors. So all of these brain parts have different functions. And the temporal lobe, which is right here, is the one which is for your memory, your feelings, and all of that. So this is where your Alzheimer's or the disease attacks. This part of it starts degrading faster, because also there is another region called as hippocampus, which is right here. So in Alzheimer's, this area gets affected very, very severely. And rest of the parts of the brain and their functions are listed here. You can read through it, take a screenshot or pause it, and you can read through it. But what I'm going to talk about is the temporal lobe and how is it affected in Alzheimer's. So what causes Alzheimer's? So in Alzheimer's, so this is your normal. So if I have to put a normal brains are basically a function, which is like if you have to talk in terms of computer, it's your RAM, it's your memory, it's your everything. It's going to function, and it is connected through circuits. So these circuits are called as neurons, and these are the ones which send electric signals for you to. So for example, I'm doing this, I'm sending a signal that I want to do this, or I want to flex my hands, or that. Those are the signals your brain is giving. Okay. So they are connected to circuits called as neurons. So what happens in Alzheimer's is there are two proteins. One is called as the tau protein and one is called as the amyloid. So these two proteins, so tau is the one which makes the circuits into like a wire. So suppose tau is like a wiring which makes those neurons tighter. So these, they come off and then they stick to each other and form like these tangles. And the amyloid is actually your protein getting degraded and cutting into pieces. And then these small pieces of protein stick to each other and they form like big plaques around your area. So as you can see, if you compare a normal human brain to an Alzheimer's, they get like plaques around it, and slowly all the functions. So it cannot fire. Your neurons cannot fire the circuits, and then you cannot function properly. So two reasons have been identified. One is plaques caused by amyloid, and one is the tau protein, which is basically, if you look at this circuitry, tau protein is like right around there, and they, over a period of time, they come off and then they stick to each other and form these tangles. And that, those are the two reasons which have been identified as Alzheimer's. Now I'm saying have been identified because what causes them to come off? What causes them, this amyloid proteins, to break down and stick to each other, or what causes them to form this? That not has that has not been identified. There have been a lot of reasons which have been said. It could be environmental factors, it could be genetics, it could be many other reasons. But it's not has been exactly pinpointed what causes them to come off and form these tangles of the plaques. So what causes them? Still unknown. So people are still researching that, and it's still a growing field. So hence there is not many cures for this disease. But always, in my opinion, that's, it's biological. But your brain, when you have certain will to do it, it kind of starts to fix itself. And I'll talk about it in a few slides. But to, in theory, in short answers for now, what are the reasons causing Alzheimer's is either the tau proteins getting tangled up and forming this area around your circuits, or this amyloid protein forming plaques around your temporal lobe. So what is how can the person living with Alzheimer's can stay active and all of that? So most often, it's early detection is key. So if you have some signs of like you're losing time and space, or you couldn't understand, or you're losing memory, early detection is key. And that helps you. Okay, you might be on that spectrum. Then what should you do? You should mostly keep a healthy lifestyle. A healthy lifestyle is making yourself active, not just physically. In this case, it is also mentally. Use more cognitive exercises. Cognitive exercises are basically challenging your brain to do some puzzle solving or whatever you like, Sudoku, whatever it is you can find. There are a lot of apps which can help you with doing like pattern recognition or any of this, whichever you like. Try to work on some kind of cognitive exercises. Make it as your hobby or your habit, whatever it is. So that keeps your brain active, keeps you active in doing things. Because if you let your brain go dormant, it's gonna get worse. So make sure your brain or mental activity is higher. So use cognitive exercise. So here is an example. And can you find cool in this whole picture? There is poo 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 poo, but cool in within 5 seconds or 10 seconds. Up to you. You can figure it out. It's pretty simple, but this is an example of like a cognitive exercise. Overall, so as I said, it's a neuronal connection. It's your brain giving circuitry or giving signals through your circuits, firing the circuits. So this is what I see with neurons, with anything with the brain. If you have certain, like I know you people who get memory loss, they don't have that will. But once you develop that will and keep working on it, those circuits reform. Brain starts working. And there is a one example which is recently published in BBC. What happens is this guy had tumors, had problems. He had almost half of his brain. And remember, this is your temporal lobe right there. Okay, he had half of his brain removed through surgery, but still he was able to walk. He was able to make those connections within 3 months because he had the will that he wanted to walk his daughter down the aisle for her wedding. And this guy, temporal lobe, his all of it, he was in wheelchair. He had a will, he kept working on it, he made his connections, even though there is half of the temporal lobe right on that side. He made those connections, he had those memories. So this is my point with anything neuronal. It's will which stops you. It's will which will make you do it. So you have to have that will to make it work. So people who are living with Alzheimer's, my only suggestion would be try to work it out, try to know what that you have first acceptance that you have some problem about memory and all of that. Try working with your brain. Try to do some cognitive exercises. It's not something which will make you bad or worse over a period of time. People who are in late stage, that means their plaque has gone very bad and that is detrimental. That would lead to death. But those who are in early stage, there is cure, or not cure, I would say there is hope for you to keep it active. And recently, I think there are two drugs which will be targeting those plaques I talked about. And we will get to know about that in near future because the clinical trials are going on. So we'll get to know if these drugs are a success. However, my only point here to say with Alzheimer's is it's a neuronal disease. It's the disease which affects your memory. But if you have the will and you know that you are having some kind of Alzheimer's indications, try working with your brain. Keep your mental state happy and active. Try to do some exercises. Keep one focus. Keep something like an hobby or whatever it is alive. So it keeps your brain active. If you let your brain dormant, that would lead to more plaque forming and more dormant activity and lead to more problems and finally detrimental to your health. And well, the late stage is leading to death in most of the cases. So that's all my point here to just give a brief overview of what happens in Alzheimer's and people who are suffering from Alzheimer's, how they can still try to be active about it. Thank you for watching this video and I'll see you on the next one.